Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of July 8th in the year 2023. This is number 160 since the start of the pandemic, and we are really honored to bring on the one, the only, my state representative, Kelly Cassidy. Good morning to you, Kelly.
Good morning. Always fun to spend a little time with you.
Well, you've been vacationing in Wyoming. Are you trying to turn Wyoming blue? What's the story?
Well, my best friend lives out there, and I go out there every year with the kids to a little town that is a little haven of semi-sanity in the middle of that place. And recently I went out to host my friend's bachelor party, because while I've never been a bridesmaid, I find myself a best man. So we went out and did some hiking, and one of the members of the party got third place in a hot dog eating contest at the local bar. But your point about turning it blue gives me a chance to talk about something I've been doing since the Trump administration and our descent into madness. We can't always avoid red states or hostile states. And so when I go, I keep track of my spending, and any taxes or fees that I pay to the state, I make a donation to a pertinent organization in the state. So when I go visit my family in Florida, Equality Illinois gets a little bit of money in their coffers, and same for Wyoming. There's a donation on its way to Equality Wyoming. I call it the hate offset credit.
That's a good one. Wyoming, I believe, was the first state to have women voting.
It's the equality state.
And now it's one of the most conservative states. Are there any signs of hope for blue-leaning folks that you could share with us, and any observations? Or is it?
No. Cowboy's gonna cowboy.
Yeah.
I do think that we probably will see, sort of in the more populous areas, a little bit of growth, and that may result in some electoral wins, but that's certainly a long game place. I think that in Florida, there's likely to be, at least at the local levels, for the state legislative seats, there might be some benefit to how out there DeSantis has been. So we may see some seats picked up in Florida, but I think Wyoming's a longer term strategy.
Any quick thoughts on Liz Cheney, who is from Wyoming and used to be a representative from there?
I'm fascinated by sort of the back and forth on, is she our hero? Is she not? Ultimately, she still has voted against my right to exist multiple times. So I can appreciate her standing up to Trump and still not want her anywhere near power over my life.
Well, Kelly Cassidy, when you got back from Wyoming, I know we had to reschedule a little bit because you were going to a meeting with the president. Is there anything from that meeting where we heard a lot about Biden economics or Bidenomics? Anything you want to share for the masses of listeners and viewers here?
Sure thing. So I was one of a relatively small group of folks. It was an audience of about 50 or 60 people to the rollout of this Biden economics message, or Bidenomics message, which might speak to the challenging nature of using that phrase. But it really, it was a great speech. There's so much good to talk about that this administration has done. I think more than anything else, though, grabbing Bidenomics in this way is probably more than anything else inoculating against it being used as an attack. And I wonder if that isn't a little bit of a lesson learned from Obamacare, and maybe we should have embraced Obamacare earlier. And so that was one of the things rattling around in the old brain pan, was like, this feels a lot more like taking an attack away and getting ahead of some economic attacks than any new policy package.
Okay, well, let's go to the state legislature, because that's what you do here in Illinois.
Where I live and breathe.
You've had a lot of other jobs in your life and your time with a political bent to them all. I saw something today, probably in the New York Times, about state regulators and power coming to our houses. And I'm just curious to know I know ComEd in our state here of Illinois has been trying to get another rate hike.
Yep.
And what do you got to share with us on that, Kelly?
I mean, let's just begin with they are the working definition of shameless. So the bill that they bribed, or the law that they bribed Madigan over, included something called formula rate, which means they don't have to come to us for rate hikes anymore. They go through the ICC, which, is a mixed bag. And even then, they don't have a lot of authority over it. That was why they were willing to take such a huge risk in bribing the speaker, and so many people are now facing jail time as a result. I would like to see formula rate reversed, and I think that this is a great indicator of why it needs to be.
So we can expect that we're going to get a rate hike, though, right?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Well, on the similar front, I remember taking a swim up in Lake Michigan and near Zion, and it was really very wonderful and beautiful, unless you turned and looked at the old nuclear stacks. So Illinois had banned nuclear power plants, but there's been a move, and there's all this talk about new nuclear and small nuclear plants. And Dave Kraft has been on the show. I'm sure you've talked to him from the nuclear.
Talked to him a lot. Him and Jim Bodart, of course.
Yeah. He's great, but he's been sending out emails, about last chance to vote to get the word out to try to stop this. What's the status of bringing back nuclear plants in the great blue state of Illinois?
And I actually have to double check what ultimately happened with that bill, because that was one of the more dramatic bills back and forth towards the end of session. And, ironically enough, throughout most of session, there was a rule that you had to show you had 60 Democratic votes before the speaker would call a controversial bill or let a controversial bill be on the board. That rule was waived for this bill, which meant that you got all 47 Republicans and you only needed a handful of Democrats to send it over. This was something being pushed really, really heavily by the trades, who got a lot of they got a lot of things moved this year that maybe wouldn't have moved in prior years. This and the public-private partnership for expansion for privatized toll lanes on I-55. Both of these are environmental justice issues to me, and neither one of them should have been moved in a Democratic supermajority chamber like this. But I don't know where it landed. I think it might be sitting in the Senate.
So it hasn't happened yet.
Not yet.
Oh, that's good.
And this is one that I could see, if it got to the governor's office, I could see, or got to the governor's desk, I could see him vetoing it.
How is the governor? I mean, he certainly has performed beyond any expectations that I ever had. And I really have liked him, and I hope that you can help me get him on the show someday. But what do you think about the job he's done and his leadership, et cetera?
It's been great working with him. I mean, as you noted, you and I were not originally on the JB train. And in spite of that, he was one of the first people to speak up to defend me when I spoke out against the speaker, and has been really just an outstanding partner in all of my work, whether we're talking about criminal justice reform or LGBTQ issues or reproductive freedom issues. I really could not have asked for a more effective partner.
Any take on, I would assume that the president will need to move to the center a little bit as we near the election time. Do you think that same situation will come up for the governor? And when is the governor's election?
Well, I mean, he was just reelected.
So we don't have to worry about him moving to the right too much.
Yeah. And honestly, we didn't see him moving to the right going into reelect either, but he really leaned into pushing back on conservative approaches. He really seemed to roll around in people who were angry at him for being too progressive. So, that's something that's heartening.
Kelly Cassidy, let me ask you about one of the things we've talked about before it came into being, after it came into being, which was the legalization of marijuana. You were in the forefront of that fight. There's been an ongoing controversy, so to speak, around reefer equity, and that the people who have suffered the most from the drug or the whatever we want to call it, the flower that turns, it's like a weed that turns to a flower in your mind. Um, uh, and what's the status of people of color, basically, and poorer people or people who've been incarcerated around the reefer question, them getting some equity in the game?
Sure. So, I mean, as you and I have discussed several times, we had to build this on a foundation that I wasn't fond of, right? The medical program was built without any considerations for equity, actually, with the opposite of consideration for equity. It was really built as a closed loop. And so, building a new house is easier than remodeling an old house. So that we started with that challenge. We add on the challenge that this is one of the most litigious industries out there, because the benefit to them is maintaining their monopoly. So we knew we were going to have challenges. We knew that no other state had figured it out yet, and we knew that it wasn't going to be smooth. Then there were some challenges with the way the administration implemented the framework that caused more problems. But what we've seen now are a lot of licenses going out the door. Every wave since 20, I've lost track of years, but 21, I think, has been entirely social equity candidates. And so we're getting there, right? I think when we first talked about it, we talked about the fact that the estimate is that it takes 5 years for a market to mature. Honestly, I don't know when year one was for us, because it sure wasn't 2020 when we legalized, because we legalized into a pandemic where nobody could do anything. So I think we're seeing progress. It's not enough. People, are frustrated that it's not enough. And it's still, no matter what we do as a state, it's still really hard to get money to build out. It's, all of those challenges exist. And that's something that the state has minimal hand in, right? We've got the revolving loan fund and things like that help, but they are not meant to be a substitute for other investment. That's why we did a limited license setup, so that the license would have some value, so that you would have something for folks to want to invest in. But it remains a challenge, and then we've got challenges around folks selling unregulated hemp-derived THC that is, chemically altered or genetically altered, or however you want to put it, that doesn't give you that same comfort. That's not really the word I'm looking for, but that certainty of safety. There's zero regulation on it. There's no testing. There are no rules. They're selling it to minors, and that's causing some issues within the industry as well.
Has the income, the revenue from the legalization of marijuana been a help to our state?
100%. Absolutely. It has been a huge benefit to the state. And again, at a time when we really needed it. So that remains an important source of revenue, even as we are investing a lot of that revenue back into the communities that have been impacted. I've lost track of what the most recent number is, but the R3 program is constantly churning out money into neighborhoods impacted by the war on drugs, for not for any number of things, economic development, violence prevention, capacity building with nonprofit organizations. So there's a lot going on with that money that I'm really proud of.
Well, that sounds really good. Let's talk about guns a little bit.
Sure.
We're recording this on the 5th of July. Yesterday was the 4th of July, and we all know the horrible shooting and the deaths that took place up in Highland Park. As much as people try to legislate against guns and deal with ways to stop the plague of gun violence, it's still rampant, not only in Illinois, but throughout the country. And I'm just wondering if you see any light at the end of the tunnel, or any things that people should be aware of and supportive of in trying to make a transition from, a battlefield to being able to walk safely around in a neighborhood.
It's frustrating, honestly, and heartbreaking. Yes, a year ago yesterday, Highland Park happened, and I saw a headline that there were, I think, 2 mass shootings at 4th of July celebrations around the country, and President Biden is calling for a national ban on assault weapons. And that's one of the things we need. We need national action. This patchwork is not ever going to work until we're not going to put walls around our state. Indiana and Missouri and Kentucky are, just it's like a faucet of guns. So, doing stuff at the state level is necessary, but not the end all be all. And, ultimately, we've now got a case coming up before the Supreme Court that's going to challenge red flag laws that have been a tool to get where family members or people close to someone can get guns taken away from people who are behaving in an unstable or dangerous way. And the fear is that the Supreme Court is going to overturn those red flag laws. We are up against folks who simply do not care about the loss of life.
That's a rough one. Another rough one around the country has been Pride. We have taken some really great steps forward in this country about equity for all people and whoever they want to be with. We've seen a turnaround since the Supreme Court, which you just mentioned. Banning Roe versus Wade, that put Illinois in the catbird seat, I guess. It's a special place where people can come to, but we're surrounded by states pretty much with real negative laws.
Yeah. Indiana just their ban was just upheld, so we can anticipate now we're going to get all of Indiana's patients as well.
What's your take on the success of Pride Month, the challenge of Pride and LGBT issues that we face in the country and in our state?
Pride was complicated for me this year. We watched Bud Light lean in and then run away. We watched Target lean in and then run away. It's a reminder that we are all we got. I don't care how many Pride branded bottles of Absolute vodka are out there. When the shit hits the fan, Absolute is not going to have my back, right? So coming up as a street activist, I've always been a little chuffed by the idea of corporate pride and how the parade has become, sort of a giant commercial. So that was reinforced for me even more so than usual this year. And then coming on the last day of Pride Month for the Supreme Court to just write an open invitation to, let people put up signs that says gays aren't allowed. It is a reminder of how fragile our gains are. The reality of this case that just came before the Supreme Court is that it wasn't even a real case. The plaintiff in the case had never provided the service that she was asking to be allowed to never provide. And as it turns out, they presented a fake inquiry to do the work. That a straight man who's married to a woman who had never heard of this person before was listed as the client who had asked for a gay wedding website. And there are no consequences for this. Like, we now have a Supreme Court that doesn't even care if the case is real, doesn't even care if the lawyers lied in presenting their case. They are so eager to push us back into another century. It's a bit gutting, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a rough one. And we have a big election.
And don't get me started on affirmative action and student loan relief and all of that. Like, this was a hell of a week for the Supreme Court.
Well, give me another minute on the Supreme Court and the terrible things that they've done.
Yeah, so in the course of 3 days last week, they gutted affirmative action, which is not just going to apply to colleges, right? All of these things are engraved invitations to expand. And let's be clear, they didn't gut affirmative action for donor legacy kids or
not yet. Let's hope.
Rich kids. Oh, I don't think they're ever going to gut affirmative action for the rich kids. So they remove that, and that's going to go into the workplace. It's going to go everywhere. There's no question. Then they came out with this 303 creative case on the end of public accommodation protections for LGBTQ people. That will expand as well. There's no question. It's another engraved invitation in the decision. And then they reversed President Biden's student loan relief. I think there's probably going to be an attempt at some workarounds on that. And frankly, if we win Congress next year, we can just do it legislatively. But that was certainly one that, unlike usual, millions of people were impacted and knew they were immediately because they were all thinking that they were going to get out from under some of this debt. So this is a court with a lot of enemies right now.
Yeah, it's not good, and I think that the only real hope is that we can uh, turn out a lot of people, so we have a president elected again that's from the
Yeah.
Democrats, and it'll probably be Biden. I don't know. There's a lot of talk about people, everyone wanting younger people, but it's not going to happen this time. I don't think so. Uh,
Yeah.
Kelly, let me ask you a little bit about what you see as problems that are facing us in the state that need to be addressed, that people should be aware, things coming up. And then well, I'm going to get to, so we talk about a more on a national level. But here in Illinois, what's going on that we should be aware of, excited about, disappointed that it's even on the horizon, et cetera?
I think that, watching the healthcare plan for folks who are undocumented play out is one that's frustrating. That said, it is really, really expensive, and so we do need to figure out how to pay for it. But I will say, while that was going on, we were also fighting tooth and nail with our revenue committee, because every single tax credit that went into this year's budget was corporate in nature. There were no human-based tax credits. We didn't increase the earned income tax credit. We didn't create tax credits for in-migration for people coming from states that are attacking their rights. We didn't create enough housing credits, things like that. So I think that we still need a more human-centered budget.
And how are we going to do that?
I need more friends in the General Assembly, man.
That was my next question. We have an election coming up. Well, I don't know when is the next state election, but I know for the
petitions will be on the street in September and will be on the ballot in March.
So do we got some people we're looking to remove and some new people to move in? And that would be true on a national level too. What's it look like for our congressional delegation? Will we pick up any more in 2024? Will we lose any? What are the challenges?
I don't know. I haven't really looked too closely. I am working with our caucus, with our House Democratic caucus, to try to help with candidate recruitment, because I am now the only openly gay member of the House. From a high water mark of 5, we're down to me. We're down to me. And so working with the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund and our caucus, we've got a list of targets that we're going to see if we can recruit some other queer candidates to run, which would be super fun. So I'm really focused on the state house this year. So I can't really speak to what's going on with our congressional delegation yet.
We'll run out of time sooner or later, but I'm going to keep firing them. I got one more. Let's look. It's going
to hurt you, man.
Let's look at the national scene, or just in general. What do you think people in your district, beyond the whole country, should be aware of, concerned about, excited about, and get involved in?
Honestly, we have to win the House. We have to win the U.S. House. The only path to reversing the damage is to get control of the House and retain control of the Senate. It is crucial, and literally life and death. My life. The only way we reverse this trend and figure out what to do about this court is if we have a majority in both chambers and the White House.
And what would you suggest people do on a day-to-day basis to make that happen?
You know what? Find a political organization that speaks to your heart, right? If that's an LGBTQ group, we'll hook you up. If it's around abortion, there are places for that. If it's around the environment, there are places for that. Get engaged, because they're all going to have like sister district projects going on. So if there isn't a national level race here in Illinois, there's a place where you can put your energy into a district where you can make a difference.
Kelly, give us a way.
Or join the Democratic Party, the 49th Ward, of which I am the committee person, and we'll help hook you up.
Right on, sister. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Kelly, for coming on. Is there a way that people can email you if they have praise or concerns?
Sure thing. How about we'll use the ward the ward committeeman email, so it can cross over. We don't have to worry about political emails going to the state. It's ward49cassidy@gmail.com.
Ward49cassidy@gmail.com.
Yep.
Kelly Cassidy, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. I'm glad you got reinvigorated on your trip to Wyoming, trying to turn it blue. And we'll see you in the neighborhood. We'll talk baseball, see how the kids are doing, et cetera, et cetera.
I will come by the gallery one of these weekends soon.
Yeah, I'll be there this Sunday. I hope if the weather holds, I'll be out
Yeah,
there.
the weather was not kind to any of us this week.